But first, let's catch up with what's going on in markets. Pete McGuire joining us from XM. Hey Pete, terrific to catch up with you on this Wednesday afternoon. How are you looking at markets at the moment? What are you observing in the Asian session?
Well, good morning, Andrew, or good afternoon, I should say. It's been a good day so far. It's a bit mixed. I noticed we're up, had a nice little tick to the upside, and that momentum building across Tokyo has been very strong for the last month or two as far as the Nikkei. So it's been absolutely game on for the Japanese bourse. It's a little bit of a mixed bag if I'm looking at some of those other markets, the Philippines and so on. But overall, I think it could end up being a 70% green shoot or green to the upside for Asia equities today.
Pete, you were mentioning Japan there. Of course, among the central banks, Bank of Japan announcing its policy decision later in the week. What are the expectations there, with particularly where inflation is tracking at this point?
Well, I think at the moment, Andrew, I think they'll sit on their hands from a rate decision policy. Inflation's still a little bit high, but overall, the move to the upside has been quite strong for their economy. They've given up a bit of steam with their yen, of course. The yen's running at around about that 140 level, but the stock market's been very strongly bid up. And, with where they're running as far as CPI, it says they're on the chart, as you can see, approaching that 4 sort of handle. So, they've got a target a little bit less than that, nearly 2%, but we'll just see how it runs over the next couple of months, if it's a good sign moving forward, similar to what we saw in the States.
So if the BOJ stays put, then what's likely to be the movement with the yen?
I think it might give up a little bit more of that, a little bit more of a loss. And so, in other words, I think I won't be surprised to see a little bit of an uptick there, maybe a 141, 142 sort of handle. It's been, fairly dynamic. It's been a great market to trade for about the last 6 or so weeks. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see it tick up and a bit softer against the US dollar.
Pete, among other central banks, considering policy this week, the European Central Bank, what are the expectations there?
Well, it's going to be 25 for sure. That's pretty much baked in there. Though there's even some analysts out there that say they wouldn't be surprised if you saw 50 basis points, Andrew. But inflation's still very, very high there, around that 6.9 sort of number. And we'll see how, first off, the drop as far as what it is with the read, and then secondly, how aggressive the ECB central bankers are going to be. And it seems to be languishing a bit. That euro against the dollar is running at around about 1.08. I've got a US dollar index sitting at about 103.25. But for the viewers, it's around about 61% weighted in the sense of euro against that US dollar index. So it makes up a large component of the value, or that metric, to look at the US dollar.
Pete, across the channel there, the Bank of England meeting next week, but we did have some data out overnight, which the governor there, Andrew Bailey, wasn't too happy with it in terms of wages growth there, putting pressure on that jobs market remaining really tight.
Yeah, well, exactly right, Andrew. That's a consideration. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually have another rate rise, but we'll just have to wait and see how it drops. May follow in as far as, the Canadians last week, us last week. Let's see what the Fed does this week, and of course the ECB, and then that may give the POMs, another 25 basis points move. I'll just have to see how it all rolls, but I wouldn't be surprised for that to happen. That pound's sitting at about 1.26. So it's again, that's been a dynamic market to look at, but not as favourable as, say, the yen.
Pete, you mentioned what's going on in the States there with the Fed's decision tonight. Expectations, of course, that it will stay put. Whether you call that a skip or a pause, that remains to be seen. How are we likely to see this pan out for the US dollar at the moment?
Well, Andrew, I think if you don't see a rate rise, then I think possibly you'll see a little bit of softness come across that US dollar index. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a 102 something handle. You're at 103.25 at the moment. And certainly if the euro, they raise rates on Thursday, then by Friday, I wouldn't be surprised at 102.5. When you're looking at the dollar, it's very, very volatile, and that's been exciting. But I think there's a little bit further softness. But if they were to raise rates, then that's going to change that decision altogether, and it could push it higher from here.
All right. How are you viewing the Aussie at the moment?
Well, it's having a little bit of a bounce, Andrew. It's from that where it was, 0.66 for quite a while. we're nearly approaching 0.68. So it seems to have had a nice little uptick since that rate rise last week, running at about 67.74. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it go a little bit further. Let's see what they do in the States tonight as far as rates. And if there's any policy statements that we've really got to hang out, really be close to and analyse, which I'm sure there will be. And then let's see where the Aussie goes. But you might see a little bit further move to the upside for the Aussie.
And Pete, I know you've always got your eye on the oil market. Of course, the oil price has been a bit of a slippery slide of late. Did receive a boost there, I guess, taking a look at what went on in China yesterday with some policy support there and perhaps with a view that it will likely increase demand.
Absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised. I just see an OPEC number, Andrew, came out as far as what they're expecting for this year. And, their projection is certainly around about that nearly 102 million barrels for the day as far as consumption. And that's up the best part of 2.5 million barrels from 2022. So the overall growth globally is more consumption. It'll be a good sign for China if they get a little bit more stimulus. The property sector, we understand the situation there. And I won't be surprised for the energy sector to take an uplift from here. But, hey, it's a hard one to call because I would have thought that there'd be no way we'd see it at $69 a barrel for WTI and 74 for Brent. I thought the Saudi oil minister coming out a week and a half ago was going to, spank the short sellers, but that hasn't worked yet.